my name is Elisa Williams. I am an RN and an IBCLC and the owner of Momentum Lactation. I'd like to talk with you today about safe and effective breast pump use. My objectives today are to review how to test a breast pump using a pressure gauge and how to determine the different stimulation and expression pressures provided by a variety of breast pumps that are in current use. So, effective milk removal ideally requires both stimulation and expression. While pumps do little to provide tactile stimulation, like a baby would with skin to skin contact or latching directly at the breast, they can be effective at helping remove milk using negative suction pressure. The question is, what is the optimal negative suction pressure that a pump can provide to remove milk quickly, efficiently, and effectively with the least amount of stress or injury to a mother's breasts? The answer is, we're not really sure. Let's start real quickly by reviewing what types of suction pressure a baby commonly uses. So there are a few research studies that have evaluated suction pressure of a baby directly at the breast, and infants have been found to exert from 80 to 150 millimeters of mercury of suction pressure, and they vary that pressure throughout the feeding. What about breast pumps? Well, there's little research or testing of optimal pressures and their correlation to breast injury or effective emptying. There are some current practice recommendations for pump pressures by a variety of clinical experts, to include researchers, physicians who are practicing breastfeeding medicine, and IBCLCs. Recommendations for stimulation pressures average between 50 and 100 millimeters of mercury, and recommendations for removal pressures range from around 100 to 150 millimeters of mercury. Let's take a look at how to use a pressure gauge to see what pressures moms may be experiencing using some of the most common breast pumps on the market today. I'm going to go over testing breast pumps with a vacuum pressure gauge. So breast pump pressures are measured in millimeters of mercury. This is an example of a pressure gauge. Some points when you're testing, you need a gauge that goes from 0 to 100 to 450 millimeters of mercury so that you can test at various pressures. The gauge does need to have a silicone adapter. These adapters were specifically created for breast pump testing. This is a Medela gauge. These gauges can be difficult to find, but it's necessary to have this adapter that will fit inside of a 24 millimeter breast pump flange. You want to handle these gauges carefully. They are calibrated, and if you can take a look at mine, it is defaulted to 50 millimeters of mercury pressure because I dropped it and I could not find anyone that can recalibrate this. So I am in the process of purchasing a new one. So handle carefully. You need a 24 millimeter flange to be able to insert the gauge and get a good seal to test pressures. You want to start by testing with the lowest minimal pressure and gradually increase suction pressure until you've tested the pump at all levels. If you are testing a pump that can pump both breasts at the same time, it is also recommended that you test both sides and balance the test of suction between each side. Next, we're going to test the fully wearable all-in-one pump, the LV, and we're going to go ahead and attach the pressure gauge here. The LV is controlled by an app, and we're going to start in stimulation mode. So we'll go ahead and start in stimulation. I'm going to pressure down on the app to the lowest level in stimulation, which is a level 1 on this pump. So we're at level 1 now, and we are pulling about 60 to 70 millimeters of mercury down on the level 1. So if we increase the pressure on the LV, we can go up to a level 6. You can see the cycle slows down. So the pump is now pulling slower, but we are able to pull up to about 100 to 140 millimeters of mercury at level 6, which is the highest stimulation. Another thing you'll notice about the LV, if you watch the pressure gauge, is that it will stop periodically and do different pulsations of stimulation, like it just did now with a shorter pull, and then go back up to a smooth and consistent pull, which is very unique in the LV technology. This pump automatically switches over to removal or expression mode when it detects milk in the reservoir, but since we're not really having milk, I'm going to go ahead and switch over by touching the app and going over into expression. Sorry, it's the little milk drop right here. So we're switching over now and we're in expression mode. It defaults to the last pumped number that you turned the pump off at. It does have a memory feature. We're at mid-level pressure, which is a pressure 5. And at a pressure 5, you can see it changing up its cycling, which is potentially what doesn't work for many moms with this pump. But on a level 5, we are doing about 100 to 120 millimeters of mercury. We're going to go ahead and turn this pump up. It does go up to a level 7. So at the top pressures, it pulls around 160 to 180 millimeters. And the manufacturer's instruction says the max pull should be about 220 millimeters of mercury in expression phase. The other thing that is unique about this pump, I'm going to stop our milk removal and I'm going to remove the gauge and show you the flange on this pump, which is a little bit different than on traditional breast pump flanges. So the hole on this flange is on the bottom of the flange, if you can see that. So when the flange is placed on the breast, pressure goes around the nipple and pulls down from the bottom. On a traditional breast pump flange, pressure pulls directly out the end while the nipple is in the center of the flange. So the type of suction and stimulation is different, one pulling from the bottom, one being direct suction, which also may contribute to why many mothers are not able to achieve an effective vacuum using the LV pump. Okay, next double electric breast pump we're going to do is the newer Medela Pump and Style Max Flow pump. So we always, when we're testing one side, want to make sure that we have the air tubing completely occluded, so we have a closed system to test the suction. So we're going to go ahead and turn this pump on. So if you look at the pumping cycle and pull of the new Max Flow, you can see that the pumping pattern is very sporadic. So the goal was to increase pump pressure gradually with a short pause at the top and then release the pressure, but it's pretty erratic when you look at the pattern with a gauge. We are in stimulation mode, which is what this pump starts in, and we are going to go ahead and go down to the lowest level. So this pump also has 7 level settings. When you turn the pump off, it stays in the last setting used. There's no indicator on this pump as to which setting that you're on. So you have to listen to noise and you have to watch um, uh, the pump. You can sense the pump vibration, and I know that's difficult for you guys to see. So this pump has already switched over, so we're going to go ahead and do this pump in expression phase. We are down in level 1, or the lowest level of expression, and we're pulling about 75 millimeters of mercury in this lowest expression, between 50 and 75. I'm going to go ahead and go all the way up to level 7, and I want you guys to listen to the pump as I do that and watch the pressure gauge. So this is at the highest level now, and you can see how the suction is not very smooth. Um, The noise of the pump has increased dramatically. This pump also doesn't have the ability to regulate cycling and pressure independently. So as you go up on pressure, it increases cycles simultaneously. So we're at level 7 now in expression mode, and we are able to pull pressures of about 250 millimeters of mercury. The manufacturer of the Medela pump and style says that the max pressure in this phase should be about 240, and the minimal pressure, I'm going to go back down again. And we're at the lowest pressure, should be pulling somewhere between 50 to 100. So this pump is testing out accurately. We're going to go ahead and go back to stimulation phase so we can take a look at that phase. I'm going to make sure we're in the lowest. So we're in level 1 of stimulation now, and we're pulling about 75 millimeters of mercury in stimulation. And we're going to go all the way up to level 7. And in level 7, this pump defaults to 70 cycles per minute with a pretty erratic vibration and pull. And we are pulling pressures up to 200 easily on the level 7 in stimulation mode. This is the Spectra S2, so it is not the one that has the rechargeable battery. We're going to turn the Spectra on. It starts automatically in removal or expression mode. So we're going to go ahead and use the bypass button, and we're going to start testing in stimulation mode. So stimulation mode, the cycling on the pump is defaulted to 70, and that cannot be changed in this mode. There are 5 levels of pressure on the Spectra in the stimulation mode, and up to 12 levels of pressure in the removal mode. So let's go ahead and take a look at our gauge. We're on level 1 of level 5, cycling or pulling 70 times a minute, and we're pulling a pressure of about 50. I'm going to go ahead and go up to a mid-level pressure, which is a level 3 in stimulation, and we're pulling about 100 vacuum pressure on level 3, and we'll go ahead on this pump and we'll go up to level 5. And on level 5, we're actually able to pull up to 250 millimeters of mercury in the stimulation mode. So the manufacturer states that this pump has a range of 50 to 300 millimeters of mercury. Researchers have used this pump in a few studies and been able to achieve pressures up above 320 millimeters of mercury. But right now in our stimulation phase, we are achieving somewhere between 250 and 300. So we're going to go ahead and use our bypass button, and we're going to go to removal phase. So we're in level 1, the lowest level of milk removal. Cycling on this pump has a range of going from 38 pulls a minute all the way up to 54 pulls per minute, and that can be adjusted to the mom's comfort. We're going to go back down to the default low, which is 38. We're at level 1 in expression mode right now, and we're pulling about 50 millimeters of mercury on our range. Let's go ahead and go up to mid-level, which would be a level 5. This on a level 5, we're able to achieve about 200 millimeters of mercury. You can see the gradual pull, release suction of this pump, similar to the Luna motif. This is why many moms may describe this pump as having a more comfortable suction. Not only can you separately regulate the cycle and the vacuum, also the way that this pump pulls is a gradual increase in pressure until the top pressure is reached, and then an abrupt release down. So it's not pulling straight up to the highest and then back down. It's pulling a little bit high, a little higher, and max height, and then releasing on the pressure. So mid-level on expression mode, again, we're at level 5, we're pulling about 200. We're going to go ahead and go up to the highest level, which is a level 12 on the spectra. And on the level 12, you can see our gauge is going up very high. We can pull in excess of 350 millimeters of pressure. So almost twice the pressure that a baby would be able to exert if mom were latching at the breast. If we increase the cycles or the speed of the pulls per minute, we'll go up to 54, which is our top pull. This may contribute to faster emptying with some pumps just because there are more pulls per minute, but may not be comfortable for all moms. We're going to talk about another double electric breast pump, which is the Lancino Smart Pump 2.0. I do want to note with the Lancino Smart Pump that the flange sizes are different in this pump, and the standard flange size is a 25 millimeter pump flange, but because this pressure gauge is designed to be used and fitted to a 24 millimeter flange, I've substituted a 24 millimeter from the Medela Max Flow, which is interchangeable for this Lancino pump as well. And I won't be using the flange that came with the pump, which is the 25 millimeter. So let's put this back on, and we are ready to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this pump on. It's the pump button. This pump does start in stimulation phase, and it has 7 pressure levels. What's also unique about this pump is it has something called a pumping style, which has 3 different modes. The difference in the pumping style, and I'll show that to you when we go over to expression mode. Let's go ahead and take a look at these pressures in stimulation mode. So we're at the lowest pressure right now, which is a pressure level 1, and we are pulling stimulation of about 100 to 125 at level 1. This pump goes all the way up to level 8, and you'll see that the way that you see the increased levels are the little bar graph on the pump. So we'll go all the way up to level 8 in stimulation, and we're able to achieve pressures now up to about 225 millimeters of mercury in this highest level. So this pump will switch over automatically at 2 minutes. This pump is battery enabled and has a battery life of 30 minutes up to 2 hours, depending on what level that you use the pump at. the higher level use, the less the battery time is. And it also has an app that is a companion app that you can use, but it does not control the pump like the LV app does. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to expression mode. Expression mode is indicated with seeing the pumping style over here and the longer, more smoother pull, which is indicated on the gauge. So we are at a level 1 in expression now, and we're pulling about 125 to 150 millimeters of mercury on our gauge. We'll go ahead and go up to a mid-level pressure, which is a level 4. The cycle is not independently adjustable on this pump like it was on the Motif Luna and the Spectra S2. So the cycle slows down when the pressure increases on this pump. So at a mid-level pressure 4 in removal or expression phase, we're able to pull about 225 millimeters of mercury. Let's go ahead and see what this pump will do on max pressure. So we're up to a level 8 pressure. We are pulling pressures in excess of about 325 millimeters of mercury. The manufacturer says in expression phase, the max level is 250, and we're pulling 300 to 325 on this pump with the 24 millimeter flange. You can hear that the cycling has really slowed down. And we'll take a quick look at the suction or 3 modes of what are called the pumping style. So while we can't independently adjust cycling, these phases do change the cycling just a bit. So I'm down on the first mode, and basically what happens is that when the mode changes, the suction pressure at the top of the suction, when the needle reaches top suction, the hold is longer depending on whether you are in mode 1, mode 2, it's a little bit longer hold. Here is mode 3. So still pulling 300 millimeters of mercury pressure. It's still in expression phase. We are in mode 3 with a longer suction hold. So these modes should be adjusted to mom's comfort and may affect the emptying time with this pump. So we're back down to mode 1 so you can see the difference in those two. So again, the max manufacturer pressure for this pump should be about 250, but on level 8, we're able to achieve much higher pressures than that.